Welcome to the Story and Critique Show. I'm Kauffman, where I read stories from writers in the community: fantasy, sci-fi, thriller, mystery, memoir, children's, and much, much more to help give you feedback on your story. I do a live reading and a live critique. I've done well over 200 stories on the Critique Show. Welcome to episode 38. By the way, I'm Kauffman, daily writing streamer, and fantasy author and dragon scarecrow enthusiast. I am on a mission to just help writers finish their books because we know writing is hard, writing is a journey, but together it's made just a little bit easier. And hopefully, I've shown some consistency after the last 600 consecutive streams. So, we're going to be hopping into it. We're going to be hopping straight into Project Space Western, an Isekai sci-fi space western by author Jaxon Arcanmoor. Now, if you want to submit your story, submit now. It's linked down in the YouTube description down below. If you're wanting feedback, all you got to do is fill out the form, answer the questions, and it will be queued up. Once your story is submitted, it gets queued up either for this stream or for a future stream. Our next Story and Critique show will be in 2 weeks from now. Right now, we're on a bi-weekly schedule. So, I try to prioritize when I see the stories come in. I will prioritize a mix of our consistent community members who've been around the community for a while because I value you, I appreciate you, I love your writing, and I love that you trust me enough to be able to send your writing back. And then I also try to balance that with new writers because we want to bring in new writers, new genres, new mindsets into the community. So I try to do a healthy balance of both new and returning. Now, how do I critique? All right, so let's go into that. So, for those of you who know, you're probably used to this, but if you're just tuning in, I try to break up my critiques into the following guidelines. I try to think about, is this a character development, a world building, a dialogue, a plot, or a style problem? Now, my critiques generally tend to be more in the alpha reading / developmental side of it. So I will try to stay away from the grammar side. If there's grammar problems, that's all right, but that's for later on in the process. Now, you can submit early drafts of it, you can submit later drafts of your story, but I will generally try to focus on more the developmental aspect because that's where I'm going to be able to bring you the most value in this format. Awesome. And then most importantly, if you are in the comments, whether you're watching live or on the replay, during the conversation, if there's something that really stands out to you, maybe it's a sentence that you really like, maybe it's something that you love, drop a comment because I promise you the authors are probably watching either now or later, and they will very much value the feedback. But if you're like, hey, this thing doesn't sound good, or maybe there's this paragraph that just didn't make sense, let the author know. I always try to take a kind and direct approach, right? So if there's something that doesn't make sense, drop a comment with why it doesn't make sense for you. If we're submitting our stories, we're going this under the assumption that all feedback is good feedback as long as it's delivered in a way that is clear and kind. Because we can only improve our stories, we can only get it to that final draft by getting feedback from others. Awesome. And if you see me highlighting your story, no fear. That's just my notes. That way I remember what I want to say after the reading, because all of my readings are done as cold readings. That's right. I do not read any of the stories beforehand, so that way I can keep it fresh, entertaining, and inspiring for me, myself, and you, the writing community. All right, my friends. So we're going to get straight into it. Let me pull up our first one here, and I am all ready. Nope, that's not what we want. All right, and I got it here. Perfecto. All right, my friends. So I am all ready here. Who's excited? Like I said, let's get into our first one and let's see what we see. So without further ado, all right, and I am all ready. So Let's do it. And we're going to make sure what type of feedback. So as we set this up, we are doing, I'll cue this up. All right. So this is Project Space Western, an Isekai sci-fi space western by author Jaxon Arcanmoor. This is let me pull up the details. Jackson is wanting feedback on storyline and character. This is, let's see, Caitlin Redder finds herself thrust from her former life as Sarah Wells into a dangerous frontier universe. Struggling with her dual identity, Caitlin becomes a tough captain navigating the treacherous dust ring systems, building a found family of complex men who are drawn to her fierce spirit and hidden vulnerability. This is the first draft of a novel, and let's see how we can help out Jaxon Arcanmoor. Prologue. Sarah Wells, San Francisco, California. Earth, Sol System. The sharp trill of her phone interrupted her rush to catch the train. Sarah paused on the concrete steps, leading down to the BART platform, commuters flowing around her. The name mark on her caller ID made her stomach tighten. She steps aside, pressing her back against the cold concrete wall. Hey, babe. Sarah, perfect timing. Where are you? Heading down to catch the train home. I don't want to be late for our reservation tonight. Sarah shifted her weight. Our anniversary dinner. Remember, 1 year together. Silence stretched between them. The pause that meant everything was about to go sideways. About tonight. Her grip tightened on the phone. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. What? Not a question, a demand. Sarah's voice carried the same edge that made her junior developers squirm during code reviews. Look, I'm really sorry, but my team just got handed this massive client account. Henderson wants everyone to stay late and hammer out the initial strategy. I tried to get out of it. I really did. You're canceling? It's not like that. This is huge for my career. The Peterson Group account could set me up for the promotion I've been chasing. Sarah's free hand clenched into a fist. 1 year together, supposedly the milestone worth celebrating, and her boyfriend was choosing spreadsheets over her. Our anniversary, Mark. 1 whole year. I know. But listen, why don't you call up Jessica and Amy? Have a girls' night out. Hit that wine bar you love in the Mission. My treat. A frustration growl escaped her throat. Several commuters glanced her way before hurrying past. She didn't care. You're pawning me off on my friends? That's not. Look, I'll make it up to you this weekend. We'll do something special. Maybe that the B&B in Napa you've talked about before. The train announcement echoed through the station. Speakers distorted and urgent. Last call for the 6:15 to Walnut Creek. I have to go, Sarah. Henderson's calling another meeting. I love you. The line went dead. Sarah stared in the phone's black screen. Her reflection fractured across the cracked glass protector. The anniversary girl abandoned for a client account. How perfectly fitting for her life lately. Shit! She shoved the phone into her purse and bolted down the remaining steps. The train door stood open, yellow warning lights flashing. Sarah squeezed through just as they closed, the rubber seals brushing against her shoulders. The train car was packed with Friday evening escapees. She grabbed a metal pole as the train lurched forward, her knuckles white against the chrome surface. The train's wheels found their rhythm against the tracks. A metallic heartbeat that matched the pounding in Sarah's chest. She pressed her forehead against the window, watching the tunnel lights streak past like dying stars. The darkness between each flash felt endless. Her reflection stared back from the window, with her wire-frame glasses slightly askew, and her brown hair escaping its careful morning arrangement. Blue pinstripe shirt wrinkled from a day of meetings, and now this. 1 year together. She'd circled the date on her calendar months ago, marked it in red ink like some kind of sacred promise. Mark had promised, too. The train swayed around a curve, and Sarah's stomach lurched with it. How had everything gone so wrong so fast? This morning she'd woken up excited, practically bouncing as she got ready for work. The reservation at Chez Laurent had been booked for weeks. Mark knew how much she hated surprises, so they'd planned everything together. Her black dress still hung on the bedroom door at her apartment, waiting for a celebration that would never come. The Peterson Group account, right? Because client dinners always required staying late on a Friday night. Because strategy sessions couldn't wait until Monday. Because their 1 year anniversary ranked somewhere below quarterly projections on Mark's priority list. Oakland slipped away behind them, and the car emptied. Commuters filed off at each stop, heading home to families, weekend plans, and people who actually showed up when they said they would. Sarah found a seat by the window and sank down. The Bay Area landscape rolling past, industrial buildings giving way to suburban sprawl. The setting sun painting everything in shades of orange and regret. She should call Jessica and Amy. Mark's suggestion wasn't entirely terrible, even if the source made her want to throw her phone under the train wheels. The notification chime pulled her from her brooding. Sarah pulled out her phone, squinting at the cracked screen protector. Sally's name appeared above a text that made her blood freeze. Girl, you are not going to believe this. Below the message, a photo loaded of Mark's familiar profile coming into focus with a woman sitting close enough to share his breathing space. Too close. Way too close for a work meeting. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. That's Rebecca from his office. They're supposedly working late on a big account. The response came immediately. Another photo, this one crystal clear and devastating. Mark's lips pressed against Rebecca's. His hand tingled in her blonde hair. One hell of a close team Mark has there. The phone trembled in Sarah's grip. Her heat flooded her cheeks, then drained away, just as quickly, leaving her cold and hollow. Are you fucking kidding me right now? The words exploded from her throat before she could stop them. Every passenger in the car turned to stare. A business manager with his laptop, a teenage with purple hair, and an elderly woman clutching a grocery bag. Sarah's laugh came out broken and sharp. Nothing to see here, folks. Just an idiot getting ready to end her 1 year relationship with a cheating bastard. Happy anniversary to me. A few passengers chuckled, the tension breaking like a snap wire. They turned back to their phones and other distractions, giving her the privacy to fall apart in peace. Sarah closed her eyes to compose herself. When she reopened them and looked around, her gaze fell upon a loving couple sitting a few rows away from her. The man leaned close to his girlfriend, whispering something that made her laugh. His thumb traced gentle circles on her hand. When she shivered, he immediately shrugged off his jacket and draped it around her shoulders without being asked. Sarah's chest tightened. That simple gesture was the kind of thoughtfulness Mark had never shown. Not once in their entire year together. The stranger noticed his woman was cold and acted. Mark couldn't even notice their anniversary mattered enough to keep a dinner reservation. The woman nestled under the jacket, and the man's face lit up like she'd given him the moon. Sarah watched them share a quiet moment, completely absorbed in each other, and something bitter twisted in her stomach. What the hell had she done in a past life to deserve this? Year after year, dating to boyfriend, guy after guy, she was piling up a long line of losers. Some people made it look easy. She stared at the couple near her, the way they touched one another, the way he looked at her when she wasn't even looking at him. Sarah longed for that kind of connection. There wasn't any selfishness in that look. It was adoration. So where did she find the ones who weren't so selfish? She felt like walking over to ask. Fucking fantastic, she muttered under her breath. Sarah was apparently cursed to attract the worst specimens the male population offered. Maybe she should get a cat. Cats didn't lie about working late while screwing their coworkers. She pulled out her phone and opened Discord. Her fingers moved purposely across the cracked screen. Ladies, Mark is officially a cheating son of a bitch, about to blast this all over Insta. Watch and learn. Amy's response popped up almost instantly. Oh shit, the wicked bitch of the West is about to make an appearance, ladies. Sarah's mouth curved into a sharp smile. That was her college nickname. Amy remembered why she'd earned it. Time to remind everyone else. She switched to Instagram, selecting a new post. Her thumb clicked on Sally's photo of Mark's lying mouth pressed against Rebecca's. Perfect. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, each word a small act of vengeance. Just dodged a major bullet, folks. Turns out my now ex-boyfriend, Mark Harrison, has been enjoying some extracurricular activities on our 1 year anniversary. Speaking of which, got my herpes test results back, and thankfully I'm negative. For anyone who knows this lovely woman, Rebecca, maybe let her know she's writing dirty. Some people's loyalty isn't the only thing that's questionable. Hashtag cheater exposed, hashtag bullet dodge, hashtag petty with purpose, hashtag worst anniversary ever. She smiled as she hit the share button. The response was immediate. Hearts and fire emojis flooded the comments. Shares multiplied. Her follower count included half of their mutual friends and most of Mark's coworkers. This would spread faster than office gossip. Sarah opened her text messages and typed one last message to Mark. We're done. Fuck off. Hope you enjoy your new Instagram fame. You cheating bastard. Happy 1-year anniversary. She blocked his number before he could respond. The weight that had been crushing her moments ago suddenly lifted. Sarah leaned back in her seat and exhaled slowly, watching the Bay Area lights blur past the windows. The vindictive satisfaction coursed through her veins. She scrolled through the mounting comments on her Instagram post, each notification a small victory. Mark's reputation was crumbling in real time, and she had front row seats to the destruction. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Holy shit, Sarah, you're trending on the company's Slack. Looks like Mark's boss just commented about it. Sarah's fingers moved to type a response when the lights in the train car flickered. Once, twice. The fluorescent tubes above her head stuttered. She glanced around the car. Other passengers looked up from the distractions, mild confusion creasing their faces. The elderly woman with the grocery bag clutched her purse tighter. The business manager closed his laptop with a sharp snap. The train's rhythm against the tracks changed. What had been a steady heartbeat became erratic, urgent. Sarah's stomach dropped as they plunged into the tunnel through Napa Mountain. Darkness swallowed the windows, and the flickering lights cast twisted shadows across the car's interior. Something was wrong. The hair on her arm stood up, and a chill crawled down her spine. The fluorescent light strobed faster now, creating a disorienting strobe effect that made her vision swim. She gripped the metal pole beside her seat. The train's wheels shrieked against the rails. A sound like fingernails on a chalkboard amplified through a megaphone. The car lurched sideways, and the passengers stumbled into each other. What the hell? The world exploded into chaos. Metal screamed against stone as the car tilted, then rolled, and then tumbled like a child's toy thrown downstairs. Her body slammed against the window, then the ceiling, then something sharp and unforgiving. Her phone flew out of her hands and shattered against the opposite wall. Darkness claimed her. All right, and we will end the reading there. That is the story beat. All right, and wonderful. Wow. Oh my goodness, what an opening for a book. What a freaking opening. I'm so impressed by that. That was a really, really strong first chapter for the I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the first chapter. Yeah. That prologue. So this story hasn't even begun, which means that this is probably getting the character into wherever the present day is for the world. Wow, what an incredible opening. Yeah, so Project Space Western. This is sci-fi, so we're probably going into some type of sci-fi world. So wow, what a great opening. I feel like we got a really strong sense of who the character was. I was very happy. I felt like the characters worked out very well. We had a lot of really fun style, a lot of really fun building elements. Let's see, world building. I didn't really get too much world building from this, but I don't think world building is really supposed to be a factor in this chapter. You can tell that this chapter is very, very much heavily designed to for character development and setting up the character. It almost makes me wonder if there should be chapter 1, but it's hard to say without knowing more of the story. My guess is that chapter 1 probably sets the character in the world we're about to enter. But wow, incredible character development. Just incredible character development. WTC, yes, soul transmigration to another body in another universe. Gotcha. Okay, so I see why we're about to. I see why you're setting this up as a prologue then, because it's technically not the character we're about to follow, but it kind of is since it's their spirit. Okay, I see why you've done this as a prologue then. Setting the end of her old life to allow her to move forward to the next life. Wow. So absolutely, I love that. Let's hop into the feedback. So let's see. So there was definitely some things that worked out really well. I think some of the things that I really, really loved, I think you can always set up prologues. This is kind of like, I think, the alternative to like a chapter title where we're clear on who the character is and the setting. We're on San Francisco, Earth, Sol system. Cool. So we're like, okay, something spacey since we're getting the solar system. I think this works for me. And this is a really easy cheat if you don't want to have to do work in the text itself. If you wanted to do setup and do stuff, you could always include this to set up the text. Oh, she's in San Francisco, 2000, whatever, Earth. But the question you ask yourself, is it really that necessary, right? I think you can get away with doing this type of setup because you want the focus to be on the character development, not spending 2 paragraphs describing what world we're in, when really this isn't even the world that we're going to be exploring. So I do think that this was a good call. All right, so let's go into this. So Sarah, so clearly this is the very beginning of clearly a very clear and decisive character breakup, right? We have our young protagonist Sarah, who's basically broken up with her cheater of an ex Mark, through learnings. So when I start from the beginning, I think that, and I mean, I think it is her character. I think the thing that I want is I think I want a little of characters. I think I want a little of Sarah's personality right before the phone call. I think that's the only thing that I'm missing because now we're hearing about this 1 year anniversary dinner where Mark's breaking up with her, but I'm like, all right, who cares? We know nothing about her. Um, I think what I want is I want almost a paragraph here right before the phone rings, or maybe the phone rings, and we need some type of stakes. That's why we have no stake set up. So, like, for all we know, a year, maybe this was the worst relationship ever. Maybe this was the best relationship ever, but we need something, whether it's about Sarah, whether it's about the relationship. So that way, us learning, oh, the relationship anniversary dinner, it's been canceled, right? So that way, it is a little bit more impactful. So I would definitely say, give us some type of setup for that. So that way when we have this early conversation, it's meaningful, right? WTC. I don't know if you've seen what does this make me think of? What was that? Legally Blonde, that original scene where you have the character who like thinks they're like about to get married and it's like the most beautiful thing ever, and then the guy breaks up with her and it's like the end of her world. I feel like that's what you want this moment to be. I feel like you want her to believe that this like 1 year anniversary is going to be like the perfect thing. This is going to be like maybe like she's going to start thinking about like them living together and having kids, and this is going to be the next big step. So that way it makes the impact more monumental. That would be my recommendation. And you kind of insinuate that this relationship is a big deal for her, but we're not. I'm not, because I don't understand the context of their relationship. I don't know what the impact is to her. Now the cheating is obvious, right? The cheating makes sense, right? He cheated on her. That's a deal breaker. But I think the first half of the chapter until we get to that cheating moment is like, okay, what are the stakes of it? And granted, this is a prologue, so like, of course, it doesn't have to be something in depth, but I think you could still do like one paragraph where you can give us a little bit of context on either her, how she feels about the relationship, or how she feels that like, okay, yeah, she's always chosen bad guys before we've heard her, but this is the one. They're going to get married. They've been talking about kids for a while now. She thinks that he's going to propose to her, right? That type of thing. And I think that would actually make the stakes so much bigger here. And that could be done very easily, by the way. And I like that. This is actually really good prose. Silence stretched between them, the pause that meant everything was about to go sideways. Cool. I was down for that. Let's see, you're canceling. And then this is all their conversation. This is all fine. Fine, fine, fine. And it's interesting because you don't really have to set up his personality. I think his personality is set up fine in the way he speaks. And I actually don't have an issue. I actually do like the way his character is set up. But I think if you give us a little information about how she feels about the relationship, it might give us a little bit additional context. Let's see. The train announcement echoed through the station. Speaker's last call for the 6:15 to Walnut Creek. Yep. Distorted and urgent. Yeah, so I mean, this is like our little bits of like world building technically. San Francisco area, that's right. I have to go Sarah. Yep. All right. So I think a lot of these other moments are fine. Clearly, she's upset. The train's wheels found their rhythm against the tracks. Metallic heartbeat that matched the pounding in Sarah's chest. She pressed her forehead against the window, watching. I love this piece of prose, by the way. She pressed her forehead against the window, watching the tunnel light streak past like dying stars. It's good. It's good description. I like that. The darkness between each flash felt endless. It's perfect. Perfectly explains her mood. So I love that. And now we get the information about the date and why it was important. I think this does work here. Um, and I actually did like the way that it was revealed like this. And then we're kind of getting more why the date was important to her. The Peterson group. This is all good. I think because this is a prologue, you probably could cut down on some of this description because it's just not really going to be relevant to the main character. Since really the more relevant part of this prologue is the cheating, so you could probably do to cut down on some of the wordiness of this description, leading until we find out about him cheating. Okay, so I'm the for me this was a little bit of a like okay, so like perfect timing. So the fact that right after he cancels, she then gets a text from her friend saying, "Oh, I saw them cheating. I saw them cheating on each other. Or I saw them cheating." It almost like it's like it's almost like perfect timing. It stretches belief for me a little bit, but I think for readers you can get away with it. But it's just like, okay, so she just happened to be in a bad spot with Mark, and then she finds out about him cheating. I feel like this needs that. I'm like, okay, so how did the friend find out that the girl was cheating? I actually almost wondered because she doesn't actually even get to hear what Mark says. And there's a few moments where I wonder, I'm like, what if it was like AI? What if it was like AI image or something like that? Like, what if it was like what if the cheating and the kissing thing? What if that was all like AI stuff or something to that effect? That would be interesting. And that he actually wasn't cheating on her, but it was all fabricated. It also then made me wonder who she was getting the message from, and it was a friend. The question I ask myself is, how come the friend is the one finding about them cheating? Does the friend work with them? How does the friend have random pictures? And then how is the friend able to see that the two of them were kissing? So I think that was a little like questioning the belief system of it. But once again, with storytelling, like we can have moments where we're kind of pushing that believability. Um, the more often we do it, the more we chance point the reader out of the story. So that is why I'm a big proponent of if there's something that pushes believability and you could fix it, because this is a small point, then try to do so. Save those moments of questioning believability for bigger story moments when it's more ingrained into the deeper story. I think this is something that's easily fixable by either clarifying that the friend either works with them, or maybe if our main character had suspected something about Mark was off, maybe she had hired a private investigator if you want to go that route. Um, but yeah, something. I think something, or yeah, I would say something to that effect. I want a deeper level. Granted, not necessary, but something that comes to mind. And then I think it's really fun, not funny, but I mean every once she like learns about Mark, and then her like whole response and her nickname, that was all great. Perfect character development. That was all. I was happy with that. And then the way you use it with the passengers was funny. Good stuff. Sarah closed her eyes to compose herself. And I think you did do a very good job of giving us this kind of back and forth, this tension within her of wanting to accept Mark, wanting to hate the cheating bastard, wanting to accept him, kind of seeing the things. And that actually felt pretty natural to me. So I was pretty happy with that. The one nestled, this was all good. Should you get a cat? This is funny. Now because is a prologue, the only thing is the whole bit about her going back and forth probably isn't as necessary because she's not even the main character we're following technically. So you could probably do to cut out this part. That what's really important is once she learns about the cheating, then her responding to it is really what's going to be more important. So I would get to the Discord part. Now, I asked myself on the structure, I'm like, okay, so basically you're using all the text messaging and social media stuff in italics. I think I'm fine with it. I personally prefer to do, when I do social media stuff, I prefer to format it a little differently. Um, like this, ladies. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, if I was doing Discord, yeah, I think I tend to indent if I was doing Discord stuff or doing social media in general because it's technically not dialogue, but it's her typing. But you know what? I think that's a style thing. So the Wicked Bitch of the West. That was funny. And then just dodged a major bullet, folks. All of this was hilarious. And then this was all good. And this literally leads into something happening to the train. And that's all that I got for you, my friend. Awesome. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So thank you so much for sharing that. That was definitely a fun little read. Definitely a great little read. So thank you so much for sharing that, my friend. I was definitely very entertained by that. And I'm definitely really intrigued to see what type of world we're about to explore and what world we're going to be getting into in this next section. Like, wow, I feel like we're going to be getting some really interesting character development with some of these characters in this next bit. Awesome. So I was pretty happy about that. And let's see, what story are we queuing up next? So next on deck, we're going to be doing Nordina, which is a fantasy story by author John. So John, your story is on deck. We will be hopping into yours in just a moment. Man, but yeah, I feel like that you did a really good job, WTC. I'm like really looking forward to kind of seeing what type of world we're about to explore with this kind of like broken character. Yeah, I kind of went back and forth, Master. Like the character seemed a bit unlikable. She seems like the angry strong woman trope, and there didn't seem much more to her. I think in the very beginning, she kind of comes across like, okay, she's just like upset. And I think the reason she comes across like that initially is because we don't understand what is her goals, how does she feel about the relationship, and what does she want. That makes her a bit more of a unique character. And then right, White's is like, then I felt she was slightly deeper than that. So once again, right, this is something that's subjective. I feel that if we set her up a little stronger, it makes her initial character setup, which once again, first perceptions is so important. I felt her character really started to shine when she became the wicked bitch of the West. I feel like that's when her character really came out, and I think that was what was interesting to me. And Mary, like that could be it as well, right? And I think this is what we don't understand, right? Is this like she thinks everything's perfect and she's in cloud nine and she's just in denial? Or has she tried so many steps? Maybe she hired a private investigator and she wants to believe, but no, she was proven right. Right. And it's because once again, we just don't understand the relationship. And I think the challenge is because I also want to know about her outside of her relationships. The challenge is because this is a prologue. We're not really following this character, where it sounds like we're following the soul of her character, but we have to spend limited time on developing her because, like, that's not what the story is technically about. Sounds like we're doing a soul transmigration, so it's technically her soul in a different body in a different existence. So it's like we don't want to spend too much time in character development, but we do want to spend a little bit so that way we can bring the reader along in the context of how it pertains to the breakup. What matters is how it pertains to the breakup and how she is broken. Mm-hmm. And I think WTC, I think if you make it clear for us what her specific goals are and wants are for the relationship, I think it will make the death more impactful. Mm-hmm. I would agree, though, Blast. I think this prologue definitely grabbed my attention. Mm-hmm. And I think this is really interesting, right? So WTC, you're saying like, why have this as the prologue? Let's see. You're saying the prologue takes the soul of Sarah as her life ends to lead into it inhabiting the body of Caitlin, kind of like the person getting hit by truck con before they die and are reincarnated. And I think it's interesting. So uh, I think this is one of those things where we keep the prologue as is for the time being. We see how the chapters in the story comes out, and then we ask ourselves, we get reader feedback, and be like, hey, how do you feel about the prologue? Necessary, not necessary. Because you could live in a world where the prologue is necessary. We need that to really set up the core character in chapter one. Or you could get it where readers are like, the prologue doesn't really matter. Like, I just want to get the story. So I think it could really go either way. And I think I would recommend getting reader feedback once you have once you have enough of the novel completed. Yeah, that'd be my suggestion, because I can't really say either way without having read more of the story. But so far it's interesting. The prologue definitely hooked me in for sure. I was definitely hooked in. So awesome and excellent. So, on that note, let's hop into the next story. But if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. I'm here every day with the Right Now community, 600 streams and counting. I'm here to try to help you finish your book. Because let's face it, writing a book takes time, energy, money, resources, and all that jazz. But with the community, it's made so much easier. So if you're looking for critique shows, you're looking for workshops, author interviews, fiction contests, writing conferences, or you're just looking for a place to come chat with other writers, then the Right Now community is the place. So make sure to tap that follow or subscribe button and you'll be alerted when we go live. All right, my friends. So let's hop into it. So I'm going to queue up the next one. And let's see. So the next one, it looks like we got a fantasy, which I absolutely love. And let me pull it up here. All right. So let's see. So we got Nordina. And I'm going to see what we got. Let me pull up the submission details. So, all right. Nordina, which is a fantasy by author John. A group of teens must uncover 4 keys from 4 lost souls to save their country of Nordina. The lost souls include a ghost, a fae, a sorcerer, and a goddess. This is the first draft of a novel. And feedback, any general feedback. Let's see how we can help John out. Chapter 1, The Statue in Nordina. As the summer waned in Nordina, the statue silently watched 2 young friends wander the rose gardens of Heavenly. Sunlight shone over the towering hedge groves and illuminated the white marble statues. I've been looking forward to this, Lemuel said, walking hastily ahead of his companion. He took large, heavy steps. Uh-huh, Heloise replied, looking at the clock on her phone. Her bright red hair drifted in the breeze, and her porcelain skin shone in the sunlight. The gardens were alive with people. Some played badminton or had picnics, while a group of burly men played tug-of-war. There was even a performer playing the harp. The sun glinted off the glass roof of the pavilion and shone upon a deep purple flag with a golden sun and the letter N stitched within it. The flag of Nordina looked magnificent in the breeze. Lemuel gazed at the world around him, taking it all in, when he accidentally glanced at the sun and blinded himself. He tripped over a sprinkler. My bad, he said as though he had run into someone. Dummy, Heloise gruffed under her breath, before she stumbled over a stepping stone. Thankfully, no one saw. Where are the twins? She asked, catching up to Lemuel. She only came up to a shoulder of his burly stature. They're at the cafe getting some goodies for us all, he replied. And where are you leading us? I feel like we've been going in circles. Lemuel scratched his soft black hair. His blue eyes looked over Halise. She had dark circles under her green eyes, and Lemuel realized she hadn't been outside in the last week while preparing for the start of school the next day. Well, Heloise said curtly. Lemuel looked away. His eyes fell upon the ruins of a white stone wall with an iron gate. He pointed to it. How about in there? Heloise raised a brow. I don't know what's in there. Well, let's see. Lemuel trudged over and pushed the gate open. After a moment, he waved for Heloise. Come on, he said. Heloise carefully stepped over. She assumed whatever laid beyond was closed off to the public. The gate opened into a long hedge passage with lines of alcoves in the foliage. Each one contained the bust of a Nordinian king or queen. The deep blue sky and white puffy clouds on the horizon both looked marvelous over the greenery. Lemuel started down the passage. Heloise was hesitant. In all 16 years of her life, she had never noticed that the gate before or even heard about this part of the garden. However, she didn't want Lemuel to leave her behind, so she gripped her flowy crimson shawl and pressed forward. At the end of the passage sat another iron gate in the hedgegrove, where they found an octagonal garden shaded by a large tree in the center. Water trickled from the fountains nestled against the hedges, and the statue of a woman stood at the base of the tree. She wore an apron painted gold over her long white dress. She looked skyward with her mouth slightly agape. Heloise and Lemuel shared a purple picnic blanket they had brought with them at the statue's feet. Lemuel thought his eyes seemed to follow him, but he just laughed at himself. Oh, I found you two, said a voice. A tall and willowy girl that their age stood in the threshold of the garden. She wore a short blue dress with gold buttons over the stomach, with a white blouse and matching necktie. Lemuel smiled. I was wondering where you two were, Calpurnia. I brought us all the good stuff, she said, setting down a large paper bag onto the blanket. Fluffernutters, purple pop, and cheesy cheesecake. Calpurnia's twin brother Rocco walked through the gate. He had a tall and muscular frame like a bull. He scrolled on his phone as usual and plopped down the blanket without saying a word to the others. Calpurnia smacked him over his mullet. The wavy black hair he shared with his sister fell back into place, and he looked up with the same warm dark eyes as her. Calpurnia had a smirk hovering over her mouth, and Rocco held his lips together. At least say hello, Calpurnia said, tossing her book onto the blanket. Rocco glanced at the novel called Vampire Party, a best-selling young adult thriller. You still read that stuff? He asked. Read some nonfiction. You would love not fiction if you tried it. It's just like real life, only better, Calpurnia replied. It's not like real life because it's called fiction. Rocco stared back at his phone. Calpurnia rolled her eyes and began placing candles on the cake. This is a nice little nook you both found. I didn't know this was here, she said. We didn't either, Heloise replied. A pair of feet shuffled toward them through the grass. Lemuel's younger sister stood by the gate and stared awkwardly at them through a pair of thick, lensed glasses. She was small and had golden brown hair that was fluffy like the clouds above. She opened her mouth as though she wanted to say something but closed it. Lemuel smiled. What's up, Cordelia? You want to join us? Cordelia nodded and looked at the ground. Yes, she said quietly before shuffling over to sit on an empty corner of the blanket. Miss Connor told me where you guys were. Did you go to the freshman open house at school? Lemuel asked. Yeah. What'd you think? Did you meet anyone? Cordelia paused. I guess it's nice. I think I'll like it, but no. I didn't talk to anyone. She replied, looking at the grass. I saw two girls meet each other, and in 5 minutes they had each other's numbers. I wish I was that charismatic. Lemuel gave a gentle smile. It's okay. You'll make friends once school starts. You can be with us, Calpurnia said. Heloise and Rocco looked up at Cordelia with kind smiles. Of course you can, Lemuel replied. I'm sure people will think you're interesting being siblings with Lemuel, Rocco said. He does the weather report for the weekly newscast at school, and no one will forget when he was struck nearby lightning. When he was nearly struck by lightning. Certainly one of Lemuel's most iconic moments, Calpurnia added. Lemuel laid out on his side upon the blanket, while Heloise popped down and pulled out a book for school from her bag. Geez, Why don't you just relax and enjoy it? Lemuel asked. I'm trying to be responsible, she replied curtly. School starts tomorrow, and we need to have this book done by the end of next week. Thunder rumbled. From over the hedges, they could see tall, dark clouds in the distance. We don't need to worry. Storms are mostly supposed to stay offshore today, said Lemuel, biting into an apple. Heloise raised a brow. Mostly? Don't worry. If it starts raining, you'll get to go home and study. Maybe that'd be a good thing today. Today? Calpurnia asked. What do you mean? Replied Heloise. She looked over, and the cherry cheesecake had been adorned with candles that flickered in the gentle sea breeze. Calpurnia raised it toward her. Happy birthday, she said. Heloise shut her book, and her eyes widened. I forgot. I've been so busy. Calpurnia giggled. We didn't forget. We never would. Heloise's eyes watered. Lemuel put an orange birthday hat on himself, gave a green one to Cordelia, then slipped a blue one onto Rocco, who gazed at his phone completely oblivious. Calpurnia, who also wore a blue party hat, and Heloise proudly put on a red one. Heloise blew out her candles and had the first slice of the cake. The five all indulged in the purple pop and fruit trays from the cafe. The fluffernutters were to be saved for later. We need to save this moment forever, Calpurnia declared. Rocco, take a photo of us all. Meh, he replied, not looking up from his phone. I have a Polaroid camera, Cordelia said, pulling it from her bag. Calpurnia smiled. Perfect. We'll have a physical memento. They gathered around Heloise and forced Rocco to look up, and Cordelia took the photo. She handed the Polaroid to Heloise, who raised her brow upon seeing the picture. She glanced at the statue behind her. Weird. It looks like it's staring at us in the photo, she muttered to herself. Lemuel hopped to his feet. Why don't we play badminton? He grabbed the racket he had brought when the branches rustled, as the wind tousled their hair. A shadow swept across the gardens as clouds moved across the sky. Drops of rain pelted each of their heads as it began to pour. Everyone scrambled for what they could. Rocco and Lemuel folded up the blanket. Shame. I wanted to beat you in badminton, Rocco said. Lemuel smirked. You know you never could. He took the blanket, and as he turned around, Rocco slapped him on the butt. Lemuel's eyes bulged, and he jumped forward, grabbing his bottom. Calpurnia laughed. The face you just made was hilarious. Heloise and Lemuel crowded with Cordelia under the umbrella she had brought. Rocco walked with Calpurnia under her umbrella. They made their way back down the hedge passage. The lightning flashed, and Lemuel thought the bust of one of the Nordinian kings turned on its pedestal as it watched them walk by. Another flash, and Lemuel saw it was facing straight ahead. All right, and I am going to end the reading there. Awesome, awesome. Awesome. So, wow. So, first off, thank you so much for submitting that. I think you did some really interesting things. I think we have a lot of really cool characters. What I love about this is I feel like you did some excellent setups for each of our characters. And I believe there's what, two, four, I think there's five of them. No, six. I'm pretty sure we have six characters. We have our two main ones. We have the other sister. We have the other. I think there were six of them, actually. Now that I think about it, I think there were six. So I think you did some really interesting setups for each of the characters. And I feel like whenever you introduced each of them, I had a clear sense of who they were when they were first introduced. Now, I think what is working for you with your character setups might also be working against you, since this, and I believe this is the first chapter. I want to say that I believe this was chapter 1. Yeah. So, and I believe that because this is chapter 1 and we're being introduced to so many characters, it's almost hard for me to cement myself on which character is which because there's so many. You set each one up properly, but now because we don't really have enough understanding yet of which character we're really supposed to care about, we have all these different personalities and we're not sure who we're supposed to care about at all. So I think the character is working. I think a lot of the characters are working at different moments, but I think what we really need is we need a reason to care about the characters. I could tell from the world building that it's cool. I like this fantasy like type this fantasy type school, which is interesting. And I think we're getting a couple of foreshadowing. I was like, ooh, we're getting some type of creepy statue. some type of like creepy like statue in the garden is going to do something. And I think I wanted a little bit more of that. I feel like we got some really good friendship building. I'm like, okay, so this kind of feels almost like the beginning of like a cozy like slice of life for like like school slice of life type of thing. But it's kind of it's hard to say because it's still so early on, so I can't really determine yet if that's what the vibe is actually going to be since we're still so early on in the story. So I think that's definitely one thing to think about. Now, as I pull up the story here. Awesome. So when I pull out the story here and I start asking myself what really worked, I think you did do a lot of dialogue. And I think I don't have any issues with the dialogue. I think the overall issue is actually with the plot and the narrative. Yeah. I would say my biggest opportunities are probably for the plot and a little bit on the character development, which is also working well for it. So we're getting the setup with all these characters, right? And I think, and I think what's interesting is even though we're getting the setup of all these characters, I'm not quite sure what our main character's motivation is. And I'm asking myself that if it's because I don't understand what it is that he wants, or if it's because I'm not sure what the conflict is. So when I'm looking at little bits here, Lemuel gets the world around him, taking it all, and when he accidentally glanced at the sun and blinded himself. So from like a developmental standpoint, I would ask myself, like, how do you accidentally glance at the sun? Um, But I mean, I guess it is possible. Like maybe it could be like a space case. Maybe that's just something. But this is just something I would think about. My guess is he's probably looking at the sky and he's like, it's too bright. So just something to think about. And then gruffed, hell he's gruffed. Is gruffed a word? Uh Gruff. Okay, it is. Yep, it is. So yeah, that's fine then. Let's see that the cafe getting some goodies for us. And where are they leading us? I feel like we've been going in circles. Lemuel scratched his soft black hair. His blue eyes looked over Heloise to dark circles. Okay. So I think the challenge that we have here is you're basically doing character setup for two characters. So you're basically doing setup for two characters here, and it's it the challenge with it is you're basically wanting us to get an understanding of both of them in the same paragraph. So I think this would actually be a little bit more stronger if we separated the character setups for different characters, right? So first, like let's give us like what does Lemuel look like, and then what does Heloise look like. So that way we can get a better context of each of them. When I read this paragraph originally, I lost the first part of this paragraph because the emphasis is on Heloise and the way Heloise looks. And then once again, we're also his motivation is also lost here because we're focused on the way that they look right now. When this is actually a really big motivation of him preparing for the last week of school. So we get all right. So then I think my biggest question I ask myself is what is the obstacle of our character? So the obstacle is that preparing for the last week of school. Now we get this in the end of a sentence, which was really more about character description, which makes it hard for me as a reader to feel something, right? So remember, we want our readers to care. So the question I ask myself is, why should I care about Lemuel? What is it about Lemuel that makes me want to care about this character? And especially because you introduce to us so many characters, I'm like, okay, well, I want to care about them. And you do some cool things, but why should I care about them? So what I would actually recommend is I would recommend placing some more emphasis on his preparation for this being the last week, move this emphasis up a little bit and have his focus really be on like, all right, he's not prepared for the last week. School's about to start, or wait, school's about to start or end. Remember, she hadn't been outside in the last week. Well, preparing for the start of school. Yeah. So give us that emotional term of how does a student feel the week before school starts? Nobody wants to go back to school the week before school starts. Maybe that's his character. Like maybe they're dreading it, or maybe he's like really struggling, or maybe he's like loves school. Maybe school is like his joy, and that's the thing that gives him pride and love. So I think give us something like that because we want to understand what is Lemuel's motivation before we start getting all these other characters. Otherwise, what happens is then we get something that I'm going to phrase character soup. Otherwise, you're thrusting yourself into a problem, which I'm calling character soup, which is we have this whole soup of all these different characters and we don't care or aren't invested in any of them because you haven't given us a reason to invest or care about the characters. Now, if because Lemuel it sounds like is the protagonist, if we care about Lemuel, then we look at all the characters through Lemuel's lens, right? So you want us to care, whether you want us to care about Lemuel or maybe you don't. Maybe you want Lemuel to be like more of like a silent protagonist. Maybe you really want us to care about Heloise. Which I love Heloise's name, by the way. But maybe you want us to care more about Heloise, right? So then we want to better understand Heloise's motivations through her dialogue, since we're not in her head, right? We're in Lemuel's head. And we do get the good sense of the school. So you do some things with the school, which is fine. Yeah, so you do have the elements of world building here, which is fine. I don't think the world building is too much. We just need the emotional context of why to care. And then once we get into the friend group, my first recommendation actually would be to this initial chapter, because we're introducing so many characters, I might recommend pulling one or two characters from this initial scene so that way we can cement ourselves with the first couple characters. Now you can get away with doing a large cast of characters in the beginning, but the challenge is with each character, and you did the setup for each of them, so the setup for each worked fine. I think my favorite setup actually was, let's see, where was it? So my absolute favorite setup of all the characters was Rocco. I felt the most emotionally invested in Rocco because I felt like I was able to understand his motivation from what you shared with us. It's clear that he walks through, he's tall, he's muscular, he's on his phone, he basically doesn't care. Calpurnia smacked him over the mullet. The wavy black hair he shared with his sister fell back into place, and he looked up with the same warm dark eyes as her. Calpurnia had a smirk hovering over her mouth, and Rocco held his lips together. And then we have this whole thing about the fiction book, and that gives us insight into his character. I felt like I had a clear understanding by the end of this segment that we read. I felt like I had the clearest understanding of who Rocco was, and I was the most interested in his character because I had been given the most details about who he was, and his wants contrasted against the rest of the groups because he clearly didn't want to be there. He just kind of goes where it sounds like his sister drags him, and that's conflict, right? So to me, that was really interesting. I want a little bit more of that with some of the other friends. And I have to be constantly reminded as a reader which character is which, because you're introducing us to so many characters, right? So it's like, I know I have Rocco is clear, Calpurnia is the sister. I'm not Calpurnia's twin brother, Rocco. I know Calpurnia was the twin brother or the twin sister, but I feel like she almost kind of got lost because Rocco was just a little bit more predominant. And then, let's see, Lemuel. Gotcha. Okay, so we have, I don't know why I thought there was another character. So we had Lemuel and Eloise, and then we had Calpurnia and Rocco. And then I think we have a younger sister come in. Let's see, Lemuel's younger sister. What was it? Cordelia. Okay, so there's five of them. Cordelia, Paz, Lemuel. Yeah, so I think it's just the five of them. Yeah, okay, so it's literally just the 5 of them, which isn't an extraordinary amount of characters, which then tells me that I wasn't clear on Calpurnia's initial introduction. Okay. Um, so a tall, willowy girl that their age stood in the threshold of the garden. Lemuel smiled. I was wondering where you two were, Calpurnia. Okay. Okay, I know. I see what needs to happen. So you give us an introduction of Calpurnia, which is fine, and then you give us this, and then she responds. Um, but I think we need an additional paragraph of cementing who is Calpurnia before you introduce us to Rocco. So I might almost consider breaking this up, like do this, a tall willow girl, their age stood in the threshold of the garden, move this bit after her dialogue. Calpurnia wore a short blue dress with gold buttons, blah, blah, blah. And then how does Lemuel feel about her? Does Lemuel like her? Is she annoying? Is she his homie? Right. So that way we kind of get a sense once again of how our protagonist feels about this friend. And then we get the stuff with Rocco in the next part, which is good. And I think that will help further solidify that it's the 5 of them. So I think that would help. And then I loved the fiction conversation, by the way. I thought that was great. That definitely speaks to a writer. I think the fiction was probably my favorite segment. And then the open house. I'm going to give a gentle smile. And then we kind of get backstory on the school. 5 minutes they had each other's numbers. I wish it was that. So I think what we want to do is I think we want to get to the birthday moment a little sooner because we want some type of obstacle, right? So we want something that's going to challenge the characters, and I think this happy birthday is the first thing. Since really one of them doesn't want to take the picture, and then sounds like the other one doesn't really care about their birthday. So one of them forgot, Heloise forgot, and then Rocco doesn't even want to take the picture. So that in itself is conflict. I think we want to get to the happy birthday moment a little sooner, and then you do a foreshadow right after the birthday, which is actually really cool. And I totally see this vibe, like the vibe with like the friends and is at the beginning. I actually really like that vibe. Um, I want to care about it. And then we do the statue. The lightning flash, and Lemuel thought the bust of one of the Nordinian kings turned on its pedestal as it watched them walk by. Another flash, and Lemuel saw it was facing straight ahead. I would actually make this happen a little sooner, or I would make it happen like 2 or 3 times throughout the scene, unless in the next like section or chapter like you're really about to play up. But I think I would do this a little bit more, like right when Lemuel walks in, because what it does is it creates some interesting conflict with the world. Right. And at first, where it's like, oh, it's just in Lemuel's head. But then if it happens a second time, you're like, maybe it's not in Lemuel's head. Or maybe it's somebody just playing a prank on them. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's something really evil that's watching them. Who knows? But I think this was really interesting to me. And I kind of wanted this a little sooner. So then it makes me think like, okay, well, they're in this like what creepy area and they're taking pictures, but something evil or something is watching them. And that in itself creates an interesting plot to me. So that way I'm like, okay, well, then in the back of mind, we're learning about the characters and we're caring about them. And we also want to know what's going to happen. So that'd be my recommendation. And that is what I got for you. Awesome. Thanks so much for submitting, John. I hope that helped out a little bit. And definitely feel free to let me know if you have any questions or want any more follow up. All right. Perfect. I was like, perfect, perfect, perfect. So I was pretty happy about that. Thank you so much for submitting that, by the way, John. That was a really, really great submission. And I definitely hope we get to see more of it and kind of see where it evolves and where it goes from there. And by the way, welcome to the Story and Critique Show. If you're just hopping in, welcome. This is our bi-weekly stream, episode 48, where I do live readings and live critiques for writers in the community. I've done well over 220 live story critiques. I don't read them before, and to keep it interesting. So if you're wanting feedback on your story, you can submit now. I accept all styles of submissions: fantasy, sci-fi, romance, thriller, horror, memoir, children's, all the vibes. And you can do all styles, right? Whether it's a short story, a screenplay, a graphic novel, I accept all types. Essentially, I do a live reading and a live critique to help give you feedback on your story, so I can help you make your story better. So if you want to submit now, submit to the link down in the YouTube description. And if you're not on YouTube, I will drop the link again here for y'all. So awesome. Let me drop that. Story and critique submission. Awesome. So definitely everyone submit. I saw a couple of new faces hop in. So welcome, my friends. Wow. What do you guys think of the story, by the way? That was a really interesting little like fantasy setup. And I'm intrigued because the plot, the premise of we get like a ghoul, a ghost, a fairy. It's like I was very intrigued by the premise. I wanna get to those creatures. I was so intrigued by that. So, and then by the way, let's see who we got next up on deck. So next up we have Courting Death, which is a mythic romantasy by author Verity Lennon. So this is actually a revision. Verity submitted this version, earlier version of the story. I want to say, I think we did about 2 months ago. Maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago. And she resubmitted it because she wants to get feedback on how if the changes improve the quality of it, which is absolutely amazing. Sometimes some writers like to resubmit previous versions after I've given feedback on it and see if it's worked. Other writers just want to keep going through the story and they'll be like, all right, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And then over the course of a year, right, then you end up getting feedback. And once again, the critique stream, this is absolutely free. I do not charge for this. This is the thing that I want to give back to you, the community, because I know that getting feedback on your story can sometimes be expensive. So I've always wanted to do the free thing to help the writers out in the community because I totally get it. I'm in the same boat as y'all. I got to get feedback on my book, The Last Scarecrow, and we know it. Getting feedback, getting an editor, doing all the things costs money. So awesome. Whew, how's everyone feeling, by the way? How's everyone, how are you feeling about the story so far? I feel like we've got in the mix, we got sci-fi and then fantasy. And then this next one is romantasy, but it's actually, we kind of got like a thriller horror vibe. Yeah, blast. So we'll see when we hop into it, but I remember the story kind of starting off with kind of a thriller vibe. It like almost makes me wonder if we have like, if there's like more thriller elements to the story. All right. And what do we got? And then we got some good comments here in the chat over the previous story, which Mary, I really like this. You're like, just a thought, but Lemuel immediately brought to mind Gulliver's Travels. With all the characters, it seemed like a bit of head hopping. I'm pretty sure it was Lemuel because that was the focus, by the way. But I think we just have to, I think it's more that we just need a reason to care more than anything. It could be head hopping. I'd have to go back and look into it, into POV. I think I was more like, let me care about the character first. Let's fix that because that's the bigger issue, right? If a reader doesn't care, then they won't read it. So first let's care, and then we can fix the head hopping after that, if that is an issue. Yeah, and you could do that as well. Like you could just only focus on a couple of the named characters. It really depends on what the greater plot is of the story over the next couple chapters. Yeah, definitely you got some great recommendations, John. I really hope the feedback helps. Or in Moi, I was like, Aura M Moai. I hope I said that right. You know what? I don't think John is in the chat, and this is what I always tell everyone: when they submit, you can of course be here for the live experience, and it makes it a little bit more. You're able to ask questions and interact. But sometimes the writers aren't able to be involved, but the stream is always available for the replay on the YouTube channel right now. So sometimes they end up watching on the replay. I'd say it's a mix. In my experience, when writers submit, they generally show up to the live stream probably about like 85% of the time. Hey, what's up, Nil? Welcome, Yecon. Welcome, welcome. Dreamy Bloody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I know, but that's kind of what I was saying as well. I'm like, there's definitely some psychological horror elements, and I think that's kind of intriguing to me. I'm like, I almost wonder if that should be part of the packaging, maybe, or if that should be part of the setup for the story, because you're packaging it as a mythic. What was that? Mythic. Why choose romantasy? I think is what you said. Where was it? You're packaging it as a mythic. Why choose romantasy or romance? I almost wonder if it's like a thriller, like maybe it's cosmic. I mean, cosmic horror is its own vibe, but maybe it's like a mythic thriller. It's like a romantic thriller or something like that. I'd have to read more of the story to better understand. But I remember from what we read last time, it definitely had like thriller vibes. And really what that comes down into, Blast, is just doing some research on what are different subgenres out there, what are different genres, and understanding like what are the elements. I did the same thing. I did the same thing when I was trying to figure out what the genre elements were for my book for The Last Scarecrow. I picked all the different genres I thought it could be and all the different subgenres, and then I narrowed it down based on looking on reader feedback on other stories. So if you're working on your book and you're like, you don't know, and not just for you, Blast, but if you're just hopping in, if you're trying to figure out what the genre is for your book, come up with a list, figure out what are all the genres you think that it could be, and then go on to websites like Amazon, go on to websites like Good Reviews. All right, well, I'm like blanking on names right now. So go on to other websites, look at reader feedback, and see how readers choose which genres of books. See also how books are categorized, and then better understand like, okay, if I go under these subgenres, these are the books that my book would be up against. Does my book match this subgenre, match this category? So that'd be my recommendation. All right, my friends, let's hop into it. And as I'm throwing this up, by the way, if you're looking for writing and audio services, I offer writing and audio services for writers in the community. So let's say you're like, hey, you're ready to invest. You're like, hey, you know, you need to get to that next step, whether you're looking for more in-depth alpha reading services, maybe you're looking for an editor, or maybe you need your audio, your book narrated and you need an audiobook. I offer all of these services. Now, generally, my pricing tends to be about 10% under industry rate. And then beyond that, I offer huge discounts. So I offer discounts for first time clients, I offer discounts for YouTube channel members, referrals, and a bunch of other things. If you want to know more, I'll drop the link here. It's also linked down in the YouTube description. But I'll drop it down in the chat as well. If anybody's in the market for an editor, a writing coach, or something to that extent, you can fill out the form. I do a free consultation. So if you're just like, hey, I just want to learn more and see like if it's actually affordable, because let's be real, right? We all want to know, can I afford it, right? Because everything costs money. Set up a free consultation. We can talk and see if we're a good match. That would be my recommendation. Excellent. Wanted to throw that up. And let's get into your story, Verity. So I have yours all queued up here. All right, and perfect. All right, so we're going to see what we can see. Okay, and I am all ready. So let's see how we can help out. Courting Death, a Mythic Romantasy by author Verity Lennon. They're just Verity wants to see if the corrections they made for the revision is better. Let's see. Some girls have a type. Alana's just happens to be death adjacent immortals with tons of emotional baggage. After a curse nearly drives her to take her own life, Ileana wakes to find herself surrounded by gods, divine beings sworn to protect her. This is the final draft of a novel. Let's see what feedback we can give her. Chapter 1. Ileana. Do not fall asleep at the wheel, she muttered, shaking her head and forcing her drooping eyelids open. The droning voice on the radio did nothing to keep her awake. If anything, the tragic news of nearby flash floods only weighed her down further. She was so damn tired of bad news, just so tired of everything. Ah. The past month had been hell. Every time her life seemed on track, something knocked her flat again. It had always been like this for her. Hope was hazardous, a false sense of security that would lead to a fall. Unlike the other times, though, this crash had been devastating. She forced herself to keep her mind on the road, but memories clawed their way in anyway. The phone call had come earlier that month from a stranger with a disconnected, unfeeling voice, telling her something impossible. There had been an accident, and her parents were gone. She laughed, assuming the call was a mistake. After all, she'd spoken to her mother that same morning. It couldn't be real. It wasn't. At least, not until a police officer showed up at Ileana's job did reality slam into her. Her parents had been killed in a car wreck. The caller hadn't been mistaken. She had. How could the world be so cruel to take the lives of two beautiful souls who had built a life of adventure and wonder? They never needed stability or fear the unknown. Not like Ileana. She felt lost even before their passing, never seeming to find the sense of freedom they had given her, the freedom they had embraced. Their weekly phone calls could brighten her worst days, and their surprise visits would whisk her away on spontaneous trips that made her forget her worries. If only for a little while. Without them, the world seemed smaller, dimmer, a place she no longer knew how to navigate. After everything that had been a blur of paperwork, funeral arrangements, and kind but hollow condolences, numbness had been and kind hollow. Everything after that had been a blur of paperwork, funeral arrangements, and kind but hollow condolences. Numbness had been her only shield. The funeral had been short, but the trip to follow their last wishes had seemed like an eternity. She'd poured out her parents' ashes, sobbing as the dry desert wind caught them and carried them away. Just like that, they were gone. The desert wind scattered the last traces of her only family. She'd stopped responding to everyone's texts, even Aaron, the man who seemed like he might keep her attention longer than most. He'd been a regular customer at the bank who had flirted with her. After several visits, she agreed to go out on a date with him. He was sweet, fun, and handsome, but through her grief, even his kindness had seemed like a weight rather than comfort. He checked on her at first, but she never answered. Eventually, he stopped. They always did. Ileana was sure they always would. Guilt ate at her when she thought about her past relationships and how she'd ended them, but they never seemed right or enough. Never fighting for what or who she wanted, she'd walked away before her interest could wane. Or theirs. It was better than sticking around in a relationship and pretending. She hated lying and wouldn't hold someone in a one-sided relationship when she couldn't return their feelings. She wanted what her parents had, the effortless connection, the unspoken understanding, the quiet instinct to know when to comfort and when to give space. A love so natural, it was like breathing. But none of her relationships ever came close. Nothing ever felt right. The guys she dated were fine, but there was no genuine connection, just temporary attraction that always faded. Was she an idiot for wanting more? She couldn't force herself to settle or pretend that temporary attraction was enough. She kept hoping that she'd meet someone who understood her, someone who wouldn't just walk away. Maybe she was meant to be alone. The thought had her chest tightening, loneliness pressing in heavy and suffocating. She gripped the wheel harder, fighting the certainty that crashed over her. She was alone. Her thoughts tangled, exhaustion creeping in, blurring the edges of reality. She couldn't remember the last time she had slept for more than an hour at a time. The nightmares came too fast, too vivid. Wars, battles, monsters, faces she didn't recognize, and horrors she never quite recalled upon waking. Worse than the nightmares, though, was the waking terror. Her body betraying her while she slept, moving without her knowledge or consent. almost drowning in the bathtub, suffocating from a gas leak, and waking up to the sound of car horns, standing feet away from a stopped car in nothing but her nightgown, her feet freezing against the asphalt. The doctors dismissed her concerns, saying she was only stressed and grieving. But they weren't waking up to find themselves in places they never chose to go. How was she supposed to trust herself or her decisions when she couldn't control where she ended up in the middle of the night? Between the grief, the exhaustion, and the fear of herself, it was all too damn much. She needed sleep, but sleep wasn't the comfort it should have been. It was now a risk she took each time she closed her eyes. Swallowing, she tried to push down the grief that was threatening to send her spiraling once again. She needed something else to focus on, something forward-looking, instead of thinking about their deaths. She thought of how they lived. They wandered from city to city, chasing adventure, never feeling tied down, and never afraid of the unknown. Perhaps she should give up the foolish idea she'd carried since she was 17, that normalcy and stability would somehow fix her. The thought of leaving Tucson, of chasing what her parents had, made her stomach clench. She tried that once briefly, and had come running back to the safety of routine. But what if routine was just another cage? She pushed thoughts of her future off until she could get some sleep and turned onto her street, her arms fatigued, her hands damp on the steering wheel. After she parked, her gaze landed on the box, sitting on the passenger seat, the sad remains of another failed job. She'd been through the routine so often that hearing, "You're fired," barely registered. Even coming from a boss never satisfied with her work, it didn't sting. It didn't help that she'd fallen asleep in the break room. Honestly, she was lucky to have landed the job. Who risked hiring someone with 7 different jobs in a single year? This was just another failure she'd tack on to the thousands she'd made in her 27 years of life. Every job, every new start had been the same. She'd think perhaps this one would stick, that she'd figure out what she was supposed to be doing with her life. But it never worked out. The boredom would begin, slowly at first, then it got worse. She couldn't stand it anymore. She'd spend her shifts watching the clock, counting the minutes, until she could be alone again, lost in a book or her head, dreaming of the thousands of places she'd rather be. But she shouldn't have dared to hope this time. And it wasn't only the work itself. She'd never been the coworker who lingered at breaks, chatting, building friendships. Every time she thought about joining in, she felt like an outsider, awkward, and out of place. The loneliness curled around her, pressing in. She knew better than to get comfortable anywhere. But did that mean keeping herself apart from anyone? Maybe if she tried harder, it would have worked. She grabbed the box as she got out of the car. It was impossibly heavy for what little it contained. She paused at the crosswalk, waiting for the light to change, when something caught her attention. The hair on her arm stood up, and suddenly she was wide awake. Someone was watching her. She knew it without knowing how. She turned her head, scanning the street, but saw no one other than the homeless man who had become a regular sight over the past few months, often shouting apocalyptic warnings to anyone within earshot, but he was walking in the other direction. Still, the sensation remained. She rolled her shoulders, trying to shake it off. It was only paranoia, exhaustion playing tricks on her. She reassured herself. Her gaze flicked to the rooftops behind her just for a second, but there was nothing. Her heart thudded against her ribs, and she forced herself to turn away, noticing that the light had changed. Hurrying across the street, she opened the main door to the building and went inside, pausing in the entryway to catch her breath before moving to the stairs. The climb to her apartment on the 3rd floor felt endless. Every step heavier than the last, her legs leaden, her muscles burning with exhaustion. Ileana fumbled with her keys before finally finding the lock. She locked the door and rested against it, her heart still pounding. Home at last. All right, and end reading there. Wow, so Verity, first off, I have to say you absolutely nailed that. You absolutely nailed the feedback that I gave you last time. I could tell that you cut down on a lot of the bits that we had talked about, and it overall the piece felt so much stronger. I was fully engaged with the character. I think there's a couple of tweaks that I'm going to suggest, but with where it's at now, I feel like it's in a pretty good place. You could probably do with some like I'm like thinking about it from from a style standpoint. I think you do have a good sense of your style, which works. I feel like the developmental side of it worked out very well. You could probably do with some copy editing or proofreading, probably would be my guess, to cut down on some unnecessary wording throughout. But overall, I would say the piece is in a really strong place. I'm pretty happy with it, and I felt like I had a great sense of the character. So when and just once again, really congratulate yourselves because the story feels very, very strong. Now, when I think about what I really liked, and once again, before I go into that, this once again feels like a thriller. What this entire chapter feels like a thriller. So that I'm just setting that up. Right now, I don't get any fantasy vibes. Yeah, I don't get fantasy or romantasy vibes at all from this chapter. And I know we had the prologue, which is definitely more what was that, Greek mythology, which that was cool. And then chapter 1, but this is definitely feels like a thriller setup. So maybe like a dark romantasy possibly. But yeah, I would definitely something to think about. Absolutely. And then let's see. So let's hop into it. So I think right now, Verity, I think the we don't want that screen. So I think right now the biggest things when I think about what's working out very well, I once again I love the opening. Do not fall asleep at the wheel, she muttered, shaking her head and forcing her drooping eyelids. So I think this is a good setup here. The past month had been hell. Every time her life seemed on track, something knocked her flat again. Always been like this for her. Hope was hazardous, a false sense of security that would lead to a fall. So I think so. I want to give you a good example. I won't usually go into full editing mode, but I think this is something that could help you. So we're starting off with the do not fall asleep at the wheel, she muttered, shaking her head and forcing her drooping eyelids open. Cool. The droning voice on the radio did nothing to keep the droning voice on the radio did nothing to keep her awake. If anything, the tragic news of nearby flash floods only weighed her down further. So I don't even know if that's necessary. I would do that. She was so damn tired of bad news. I think this gets the point across. The past month had been hell. Every time her life seemed on track, something knocked her flat again. And it had always been like this for her. Hope was hazardous, a false sense of security that would lead to a fall. And then we're referencing a crash. Okay, so I see here. So this one word. So unlike the other times, though, this crash had been devastating. Gotcha. Okay, so I think we could do a better transition for this. Hope was hazardous. A false sense of security would lead to a fall. So I think this just needs to be reworded. Then the hope to a fall. Then the devastating crash. Then the let's see. Hope was hazardous. A false sense of security that would lead to a fall. I would actually almost recommend, and you do an overall job of like you're basically keeping your paragraph structured in a certain way. I think you could actually get away with doing a focus on the dam the dam crash came to mind. The dam crash came back to or the current dam crash came to mind again. Her fingers or her hand gripped the wheel. Her hand gripped the steering the steering wheel tighter. Right. So I think we can do this. I think we just needed a better transition here. And this is just this is just a recommendation. You can probably come up with something that sounds smoother. That's just on the spot. And now we're going back here. The phone call had come earlier that month from a stranger with a disconnected, unfeeling voice. So basically we're learning about the crash, right? And I don't actually know if we need her mind. I don't know if we need that because I think you've made this obvious that she's trying to keep her mind on the road. I would almost this is an example of like you're telling us this. I would rather you give us an action, like her hand grip the steering wheel. Like I would actually rather get that in this moment, so that way we can focus on where her mind's wandering to. I would almost go something like this: memories cloud their way to the surface as she tried to focus on the road. The phone call, memories called their way despite, let's see, I think I would actually go, I'd say despite trying to focus on the road, memories clawed their way. No, that's not, I would go memories clawed their way to the surface. I think I would do something like that. So then we can focus this on the memories. The phone call had come earlier that month from a stranger. Memories. I would say the crash. I would almost go her parents. Despite trying to focus on the road, memories called their way to the surface. The phone call had come earlier that month from a stranger with a disconnected voice. With a disconnected, unfeeling voice, telling her something impossible. There had been an accident, and her parents were gone. There had been an accident, and her parents were gone. Yeah, I feel like there's a better way to word this, but I think I'm just going to be picky right now. I have to think about that. But overall, though, what I'm doing is I'm tightening up the beginning of this, because since this is the first page, you want to make it as tight as possible. So you definitely want to make it as tight as possible. So, and by the way, I saw a question about Pew. Let's see. I'm just looking at your comments. Blast, check. Okay, good to know. Do some research. So Master, sorry, comment. I'll touch on your comment in a second. But James, you asked a question: is there a big queue for story reads? It's kind of mixed. There are a good number of stories submitted. What I would recommend is submit a story, because even if I don't get to your story today, it gets queued up for following streams. And we do the story and critique stream every other Saturday, so I get to all stories. It's just a matter of, does it get to there today or on a future one. So I would definitely submit now, regardless, and we'll see where we're at. By the way, welcome, Bugs. And let's see, Master. Like, was it just me, or did I feel there was a little bit too much psychic distance between the character and the reader? Overall, though, I am not sure. This might be my thing. I mean, there in the reason you're feeling that, Mass, is because there's more distance. It feels like in the beginning, and then once we get into the crash, once we start getting the way that she feels about it, it starts feeling closer. For anyone who doesn't know what psychic distance is, and I'm sure most of you do, but for anyone who doesn't, psychic distance is the word choice that you're using as the author that gets us closer to the POV of our main character, right? So if you're further removed from a character, I was like, I'm sure I could explain this better, but if you're further removed from a character as a narrator, you're talking about the character. The character feels things and does things like that, and that's me. That's the narrator talking. If you have less psychic distance to the character and you're closer to them, it's I feel. I feel this is the right way, or I feel this way about the thing, or I want to go do the thing. Right. The narrator, the character feels like this, as compared to a closer psychic distance. The character, I feel this way, or the character feels this way. So in terms of your word choice, it's the closer you get to their POV to make us feel that we are closer into the head of the character. Now, we don't always need to be as close. We don't always have to be in the main head. We have to be close. It depends on the type of story you're telling. Let's see. And then what else do I have? Let's see. So it wasn't, at least not until a police officer showed up. All right, so then we're kind of going into the weekly phone calls. So I think all of this is good. I think as we're describing the parents, I think the setup, the setup of what happened, because really that's all past tense stuff that's already happened. So really you're summarizing that more for the reader's benefit. What we really want to get to is how the main character feels about the current situation. And we're seeing that we've already gotten that sense through the action. So I would actually recommend just shortening this bit up, all the setup for like what had happened and how she feels about what had happened. I would just shorten it a little bit because we really want to get to she stopped responding. We want to get to this bit because this is where we're seeing the more conflict with her actions. We're getting into the guilt with her relationships and how she ended them, but they never seemed right or enough. We're fighting for what she wanted. She walked away before interest could wane. Yeah, I think I felt like I was pulled into it as I got. Yeah, I think after she stopped responding to text, I think this is when I, as a reader, would have been felt a little bit more pulled into it personally. And I mean, a lot of people could probably relate with this, right? Of like feeling like you're never finding the right relationship. I'm sure that could resonate with a lot of people. So I think this is definitely good emotional resonance with people. Not everyone can relate with both their parents dying in a car crash. It's a little bit of a harder thing for most people to relate with. And people could relate with losing their parents. But dying in a car crash, that's a little bit of a harder, but more people can relate with not finding the right relationship. So I think this is a little bit of a stronger emotional connection that you're trying to connect with the reader on. And then the guy she dated was fine, what she wanted. And then where we are really pulled in was the nightmares. This is where the real fear and the real conflict starts. What we really want to do is we really want to get to this moment as soon as possible because this is the unique conflict that is happening to our main character that we want to get our readers to, because this is what's going to create the emotional this is what's creating stakes, right? Right now the initial stakes is she's going to crash because she's not sleeping enough. Okay, yeah, sure, but that's like a minor stake. Then the next stake is, oh, her parents died. Okay, so she's grieving. All right. So the stakes is, will she get over her grief? It's a slightly bigger one. But the real stakes is that she's having nightmares and it's adversely affecting her life. These are the real stakes that we want to get to sooner. Yeah, like I loved it. By the way, like this, once we get to the nightmare stuff, I love this. This definitely, by the time I got through this nightmare bit, I was fully engaged as a reader personally. And then we get the stuff with the work. She tried that once. Now, and this was a recommendation because you transition back to the present moment. Um, and I think you had cleaned up this part. I remember you had more about school and college before, and I think your revision on this worked really well. So this was all good. I was fine with that. When you get back to the present moment, I think this is actually a good moment to make this its own line. Instead of what? Instead of but, what if routine was just another cage? I would kind of just do that. Now, I don't know how you use italics, but this could be a moment where you want to, if you want to emphasize, this could be something that works because this is a really powerful statement. Now we go back to the present. And now we learn how she was fired. Basically, her life's fallen apart. Good. This is all good stuff. And this is really, the firing is probably a transition into what's happening in the present life. That's all fine. So now she doesn't have a job and she's basically even more of a loner with her grief. Someone was watching her. This was a really good moment. The someone was watching her. Once again, really great conflict. I loved that. And then with the homeless man who had become a regular sight over the past few months, often shouting apocalyptic warnings to anyone within earshot. I like this. I mean, this is definitely foreshadowing. I mean, this makes me think that this is foreshadowing that homeless man is actually something more. But it could be misdirection. It very well could be misdirection, and I think you absolutely achieved it with this moment. Maybe it's a foreshadow, maybe it's a misdirect. But it's small enough that it's not super relevant. So I absolutely love that. Really, really great work on that bit. Awesome. And that is the end of the feedback. Thanks so much for submitting again, my friend. I love the story. I'm definitely really looking forward to seeing how the rest of the story evolves. And once again, I'm like, I want the thriller vibes of it. Like, I'm really hoping it's categorized as a thriller-esque. My guess is the reason you're categorizing as romantasy is probably because the B story is about the romance between the characters. And I'm sure she probably gets thrust into a fantasy type world in the chapters coming up. Yeah, so I think it'd be hard for me to really define until knowing more. But yeah, so something really interesting. And I actually dealt with the same exact challenge, Verity. Um, Thinking of like, okay, what was my book? What was Scarecrow? Is that thriller? Scarecrow has a lot of thriller elements. I've gone with dark fantasy action adventure because there's a lot of thriller and horror elements, but I wouldn't categorize it as a horror or a thriller. But I could be wrong. It's part of the journey, right? Awesome. And then I know we got some pretty good comments here in the chat. But before we do, let me queue up our next story is going to be, what do we got next? What I Should Have Said, a screenplay drama by author Matty Marengo. Matty, I got your story queued up on deck and we'll be hopping into yours next. Awesome. And by the way, if you're enjoying the stream, share it with a friend. We have all different types of writers here. We want to bring in writers of all backgrounds, of all genres, so that way we can help you get better feedback for your story. The more voices, the more perspectives that we have, the more we can help each other grow as writers and as a community. So tap that share button, share it with a friend, and bring in other styles of writers to the community right now. Awesome. I appreciate you, my friends. Wow. So, and I think you got some really good feedback on that. Yo, yeah, James, you're always allowed to give feedback. That's actually, I love it because I want you guys to get feedback just as much because like we have to help each other grow, right? We have to remember that feedback is subjective, right? I do have a lot of experience. I've been writing my entire life, went to college for writing, 600 live streams, right? At the end of the day, a lot of times feedback is still subjective, and I really try to set that up that sometimes my feedback can be subjective. Certain feedback isn't subjective, right? If a piece of dialogue doesn't have a period, or doesn't have some type of punctuation, that's not subjective. That's black and white. Your all sentences has to have certain punctuation, right? So certain feedback is not subjective. But on like a lot of things, let's say for a Verity story that we just did, I would say subjective, probably like 75% of the feedback was subjective based on my experience. So definitely always love your guys' feedback because the more feedback we get as writers, the better we can make our stories. Let's see. And then he said, I find in those hyper specific scenarios, breaking them down into their constituent parts helps to make the reader relate. I can't relate to losing my parents in a car crash, but I can understand the anxiety that comes with driving, for instance. Right. And you see, that's actually a really, really good call out. Most people haven't lost their parents in a car crash, but a lot of people deal with anxiety, myself included. Trust me, I've dealt with a lot of anxiety in my life. And I think having that emotional connection of what does it feel like of anxiety, maybe driving around, being anxious about just things that feel outside of your control, that's something that's easily relatable with a lot of people. So good feedback. Blast, you'll never tell. Awesome. Glad we were able to help you out, Blast. Really appreciate your submission and hope to hear more parts of the story in the future. Awesome. And on that note, let's hop into the next reading. All right. So we got Matty with a screenplay for Matty. All right, Matty, what do we got here? So I'm going to pull up yours, and it looks like, so we're doing a screenplay this time, and we're going to see what we can help Matty with. And I am all ready. All right. So we got What I Should Have Said. All right. And I think, yeah. So once again, this is a screenplay. So with screenplay readings, they're a little differently. I'll try to see how best I can adhere to it, but screenplays are a little bit of a different style of reading, and we will see what we see. So without further ado, let's pull this up. What I Should Have Said, a screenplay drama by author Matty Marengo. The screenplay is mostly done. Matty is looking for feedback on emotional impact and whether the story feels too derivative. They have included the first scene and a monologue towards the end that they had written in one of our WriteNow streams. And the story is about after the death of his best friend, David recounts his inadequacies to help his friend from the start of their relationship. They're currently in the revision mode, and let's see how we can help Matty with revising his screenplay. What I Should Have Said. Written by Matty Marengo. After the death of his friend, sends him spiraling. A teenager reflects on his regrets during the tenure of their relationship. Interior school hallway, day. A locker in an empty hallway. A note hangs from the small ventilation on the locker. What I should have said is that I love you. I should have said thank you for being my friend. The note sticks out a little bit, just enough to read, Davy boy. Interior, Adam's basement, night. A record player sits on a lonesome desk, spinning away. Thank you for being there for me when I was down. Thank you for being someone I could message and you'd answer in 5 seconds. What I should have said is that I care about you as something more than a friend. I care about you more than I care about myself. The record player slows almost to a stop to match. Exterior fair, Ferris wheel night. A Ferris wheel spins behind a wall, a massive lineup of people waiting to get into the fair. What I should have said is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I put you through. I'm sorry that I watched you destroy yourself. I'm sorry that I let you. I'm sorry I helped. What I should have said is I should have done more. I saw you struggling and made an active choice not to help. What I should have said is that I want to be there for you. I want to be here for you now. The line moves steps forward at a time. Interior, the Hungry Drakes, night. People clatter around a stage, a microphone stand with no one behind it. What I should have said is that I'll stay a little bit longer. The party is stressful, and I know I freak out in situations like this. But if you're struggling that much, I want to stay here with you. What I should have said is, I'll miss you tonight. A hand picks up the mic as the karaoke machine behind it whirs to life. Exterior poolside night. A pool wades water around, jets and filters running. What I would have said is that I'll miss you tomorrow. What I should have said is that you're everything to me. An empty bottle of Tito's vodka. Cut to black. What I would have said is that I don't know what I should have said. I don't know what I could have said. I just really miss you. Interior classroom day. The silence is cold and unrelenting. Students murmur to each other, clutching the walls, standoffish, staring in shock at David, 17, a wallflower with high anxiety. He doesn't really talk much. David stands in the center of the classroom, fist clenched and shaking. His whole body moves with his deep breaths. Across from David, at the front of the class, Mr. Sawa, 62. A teacher with a strict attitude. His philosophies are strong because that's his profession. He's typically a calm listener. Everyone, out! Everyone keeps staring. Now! The class continues murmuring as they walk out the door. David still stands, heaving over his slip desk. Paper everywhere. Sawa catches him. He looks pissed. He takes a deep breath as the last student leaves the class. He walks over and closes the door. So, you want to express what the hell that was? David does not respond. Flashes a young man's face, smiling. David stares at the floor. A tear rolls down his face. Sawa watches, faces away from David, and breathes deeply. I'm sorry. It's okay. I miss him too. Sawa turns back around, walks over to him slowly and calmly. That's what this is about, right? David does not respond. He just leans over and begins to pick up the paper off the floor. Hey. David continues. Sawa bends down, places his hand on the paper. David reaches for. It's okay. Leave it for now. David looks up to see a reassuring glare from Sawa. Sawa nods. Just leave it for now. David nods. Do you want a tea? David nods. Sawa nods back. Cut to interior classroom moments later. Sawa sets a steaming tea on the teacher's desk at the front of the room. David watches as Sawa walks over and grabs a chair, drags it over to sit next to David instead of across from him. You know, these things happen. First time someone has actually been able to lift the desk instead of tipping it over. Sawa smiles. David smirks a little before it fades. You and him were pretty close. David nods. Yeah, we were. Tell me about him. How did you guys become friends? David looks at his tea. He picks it up from his desk. He moved him next to me. Sawa smirks. Interior classroom moments later. David stands, heaving in the middle of a classroom. A desk flipped in front of him. All the students clutching at the walls around him, staring, some laughing. Interior classroom, afternoon. David looks at Sawa sorrowfully. I just get so angry, at myself. Sometimes at him. Sometimes at my parents. And it's usually at my parents. It hurts a lot. It hurts so fucking bad. Knowing that I knew what he was going through. Knowing what I could have done. Just thinking about it. And I sit in class and I have an empty seat next to me where he was supposed to be. And for some reason, I think he's mad at me. I hate him so much sometimes. And I get so angry. I take it out on the other people. And I know I'm pushing people away. But I just can't get it out of my head. What I should have said to him. There was nothing you could have said, David. You said it yourself. I was the one who knew him the best. It just means that I was the only one that could have stopped it, and I didn't. I put the bottle into his literal fucking hands. I mean, I practically did it myself. David? I don't know how to live like this. You're snowballing. I don't care if I snowball. I don't want to be alone. David stands in front of Sawa. He cries. Sawa stands up and sets down his cup. He hugs David. David cries onto Sawa's shoulder. I should have said something too, David. David parts from him. He sees Sawa staring at him with tearful eyes. David, I saw what you two were doing, and I did nothing. I have regrets too, and I owe you a sincere fucking apology. I'm sorry. David parts from him. It's okay. It's okay. Both of them crying. They part ways. They look at each other. Sawa smirks and holds his hand out, motioning to sit down. They do, together. Sawa sets down his cup. They sit in silence. David, please listen to me. I know it hurts. I know it feels like the world is forgetting about him. I know it feels like I'm telling you to move past it and just be better. Sawa watches David's reaction. He speaks with a great soothing emphasis and certainty. Doesn't it? But I'm not going to tell you to let him go. This grief, this pain, It doesn't leave. It stays. And it's good that it stays. It hurts. And it's good that it hurts. What that pain is a reminder of who he was, whether that be a friend, whether that be a parent. Sawa's voice cracks a bit. He speaks passionately. David stares at the ground, unflinching. Whether that be a student, a lover, it's just a reminder that someone existed, someone you loved dearly. That pain is caused by all the positivity you stored for that person. All of the love that you never expressed did not up and disappear the moment Adam left you. It's good that it hurts. Not because he would want you to be hurt, not because you should want yourself to be hurt, but because there is now a 100% guarantee that he is still here. Religion is not a concept I follow. It just can't be when there's no proof. Fact. That's what I follow. In fact, you're hurt and will continue to hurt. But this hurt, that is a choice. Here's another choice. Those regrets will stay no matter what. So do you want to live with those regrets? Or do you want to stay in the same place, unmoving and in place? The choice is binary, but it will be the most important choice you ever make. And when you live to my age, you will make that choice time and time again. What's important right now, though, is you. What you choose to do in those moments is what will affect how you live your life for the rest of it. And I wish to God you didn't have to do it so young, David. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your loss. David sits for a moment, thinking. Thank you. Sawa nods. He stares at David, their eyes mirroring a solemn sadness. David breathes in deeply. A tear rolls down his face. Sawa and David sit in silence. It is heavy. It is gripping and intense, but it is clear. David has made his choice. Jesus, what a bummer. Interior classroom afternoon. A bell rings. Students sit in their seats at their desks, lining the classroom. They all look to the front to see Mr. Chalway, 45, a man with a common authoritative cadence, stands at the front of the classroom in front of a chalkboard, looking out at the sea of students. So, raise your hands if you did that reading on Bergam last night. And actually, I'm going to end the reading here since that is a different story beat. Looks like this is a different story beat. So we will end the reading there. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. that was like deeply moved. That was so dramatic. I actually really liked that opening. You could tell this is definitely one of those pieces that's really supposed to pull you in and make you feel very emotionally moving. The opening of it actually reminded me very much of what was that Netflix show from years back? Was that 5 years? Maybe like 5 or 7 years back. Was that 7 Reasons Why or 10 Reasons Why? I'm like, what was the Netflix show about the suicide Netflix show? I think it was 10 Reasons Why? The cassette tape. 13. I'm like, I knew there was a number. 13 Reasons Why. But that opening definitely reminded me of the Netflix show from a while back of 13 Reasons Why. That opening kind of had that reminiscent feel where the character, it feels like has passed away, but it sounds like they're wanting you to feel about something. That was, for some reason, that was the vibe I was getting from that first bit, by the way. So, but yeah, I mean, it was definitely very emotionally moving. I feel like it had some very definitely impactful parts. I think the opening of it was very strong. I was definitely I love that opening. I think the biggest opportunities, once we kind of got into the ending, the monologues and the descriptions, we got to cut that down, or we got to intersperse and cut it up with more with some visuals of what we're seeing. And I think there's a couple of different ways to go about it, but I think you were able to capture like the depth of the scene, and then based on how the actors bring it to the table, based on the direction, definitely be very emotionally moving. So really, really great work on bringing that together. I thought this is definitely like a hard subject to tackle, right? Tackling a death, and we don't know why. We don't know how the character died, but based on what we've learned so far, the character sounds like they died from something alcohol related. And that the main character is feeling responsible. The teacher also feels guilty as well. So we definitely have some guilt to go around. So when I'm pulling up into the scene and I'm asking myself what worked out really well, awesome. I would say your character development was really strong. World building was good. Dialogue in some bits could be cleaned up, I would say for sure. I mean, the plot was pretty clear. I want to know how he died, right? That's the mechanism, right? We want to know how did the character die, and then how does that character's death? Well, right now the character's death is basically causing our main character to spiral, right? So the question we're asking the viewer wants to know is how is our main character going to overcome this grief, or is he going to get worse? And based on what we had seen, it looks like he's going to get worse. So now we're going along for the journey of how are we going to go along with our main character and see how he descends through grief and how grief affects him. And I liked all this, and no ings from the small ventilation. Yeah, so I really liked this opening. I thought the opening was good. I like this. I think you could still probably cut it down a little bit on wordiness. But I like that we get the Ferris wheel in the background. That's like a cute setup. Overall, this is good though. I'm liking the vibe of it. And then I like that we're getting each of the different scenes and it's David's voiceover. And I think that was very well done. I was all for that. As a screenplay structuring tip, don't no capitalizing. Don't capitalize like this. If you capitalize, whoever is adjusting the script will think that this is supposed to be like a transition. If you want to place emphasis on a scene element, you go an empty bottle of, and I think you go italics of Tito's vodka. I'm pretty sure you go italics if you want to place emphasis, although italics might be for audio. What I would do is I would just actually I think you could do bold actually, now that I think about it. I don't think it's italics, I think it's bold. I'd have to refresh myself. I think you go I think bold is how you do if you're wanting to emphasize in a script. Empty bottle of Tito's vodka. And I think that's how you do it. Rolls on the ground. But you also have to remember, anytime you place a brand name, you're now requiring the director is now going to have to go get the go pay for a brand go pay for brand awareness, and they're going to have to pay for the rights to now go get Tito's vodka specifically, and then they have to pay attribution to whichever company holds Tito's to use it in their film. So anytime we use brand recognition, something you have to be aware of. If a director is reading this or a producer, all they're going to see here is this is money I'm now going to have to spend to get Tito's vodka. So in moments like this, unless Tito's vodka is absolutely necessary, and sometimes certain brands it is absolutely necessary, but other times if it could be anything, I would just say like an empty bottle of a generic, or you could say of a name brand vodka rolls on the ground, right? Then we can have the director figure that out, or the producer, like, okay, it needs to be name brand, sure. So just an FYI for screenplays. Your character setups for both of our characters was actually really well done. I liked both of your character setups a lot. And I don't think we would capitalize text. You would never capitalize dialogue like that. Everyone out. If you want to add emphasis, you go parentheticals, shouts. That's how you'd go. You would do parentheticals right below the name, but above the dialogue, or you could do that, and that would actually achieve the same thing. Now, some of the formatting was a little off, and that was just because of transitioning it to Google Docs. So don't worry about this stuff. Some of the formatting was just funky. But in the script, the normal script format, it was fun. It's interesting because it sounds like Sawa already has a lot of empathy for David, and he already knows what the problem is. I might consider rewording this if Sawa already knows what's going on. But I think this is actually a very heartwarming moment between the teacher David and Mr. Sawa. By the way, you've introduced him as a Mr. Sawa. So for his tags, his character should be the same exact name that you've introduced him as. Because a casting director is going to look here, and then they're going to go control find all the instances of Mr. Sawa, and then get that excerpt and figure out who they need to cast for it. So you should be doing the whatever you use for the character name, same exact thing. Now, sometimes character names can change based on the narrative, then you would change it, but always use the same exact thing for a character name, especially with screenplays. I really liked that they did a whole I really liked that this was like a whole like he got him tea and it's this kind of like little like bond over their mutual grief, and I thought that was actually heartwarming. Um all right. Now, I think tell me about him. How did you guys become friends? You moved him next to me. I'm not sure what this moment was because you said this is moments later, but I thought it was just David and Mr. I thought it was just David and Sawa in the classroom, but now all the students are back in the classroom. I was kind of confused by this. It kind of seems like this was supposed to be a flashback, but I'm not sure. So I would just say clarify that cut. And then on the dialogue, so once we get near the end here, most of the dialogue just needs to be cut down for wordiness. You can get to the same points in about half the dialogue. You want to ask yourself, what is the intent of this specific dialogue? What is the one thing that this piece of dialogue needs to achieve? And then how is every sentence going to serve that one need? And you're like, hey, I got multiple things I need to achieve. Then break the dialogue up with actions, or break it up with shots that we should be seeing. And same thing as earlier, right? You wouldn't capitalize. You would put the abbreviations here if he's screams, if that's what you want it to be. And then with the teacher, so something to be aware of, right? So they are having this very like emotional moment. Um, you do have this 62, I think, or was he 58? Or you basically have this older teacher hugging a student. In our current climate and day and age, they are having this very emotional moment, but that is a very it's a boundary that you have to be aware of with a teacher student relationship. And I think it's just something to be aware of, that it could be perceived a certain way of a teacher hugging a student, regardless of the age. So something to be aware of. And what's interesting is I think once we get into this big Sawa monologue at the end, he doesn't really feel strict anymore. His character kind of feels like he's transformed. I think the challenge is then it kind of feels like once we get to this monologue that it feels less like Sawa, and it feels like it's more like the writer is trying to get across like a philosophy or a theme that they want the reader to take, or that they want the viewer to take away. So what I would recommend is actually either I would actually recommend rewriting this. Take the core theme of what you want to get, and then cut it down to a little bit more of a briefer commentary on on the core theme that he wants to get across. There are elements of this that I did really like, and I could totally see it like showing like him talking and then seeing like cut over of like students in the hallway of crying, or maybe showing other people in the deceased of the dead friend's life, of how they were how they were affected. So I could totally see it working out like that as well. But and I mean, the end of this then works good. Although I'm not sure what choice David has made. So you said David has made a choice. This was not clear. You said Jesus, what a bummer. This feels more like a author or the narrator, and we wouldn't want that in a script. So I would want to get rid of that. And then David has made his choice. How do we know that David has made his choice, and what choice has he made? I would actually give us a little action of David wipes his face off, stands up, and slams it. Wipes his face off, stands up, and walks out of the room, clearly making his choice. Like something like that. Let's give him an action that makes it a little clearer. But overall, this moment was very heartwarming. So, yeah. Other than that, that is everything that I got for you, my friend. Hopefully, Matty, that was able to help you out a little bit. But talk about a really powerful and moving piece. Like that was definitely a really moving drama. And I definitely have to commend you because it is so hard. It is so hard to tackle that type of emotional screenplay with depth and to be able to pull off a lot of the elements that you did. Like I said, the beginning was really strong. The middle was doing pretty good. And then the ending just needed some like tuning up and cleaning up to really make it more impactful. But really great work. Really, really great work. There's a reason like I don't tackle that type of material because it's just not something I'd feel that I probably maybe I could do it with enough practice, but it's just not something that it's just harder. It's a harder type of material to tackle. I stick to my fantasy. I stick to my fantasy worlds and very strange fantasy worlds. Mm, awesome. And what did y'all think of it? I think we definitely had some great comments here in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, definitely a blast. Like, definitely feel the emotions. Tons of grief. Very nice done. Great writing and reading. Thank you so much, Sean. Yeah, glad to have you in the chat. And let's see. There you go, White's here. An empty bottle of whatever drink is owned by someone that will pay us for product placement. Absolutely. Let the producers and the directors decide that. Yep. Let the producers and the directors decide that. Because if it's a big name, then they're going to require us to use their product. If it's a smaller one, we're more likely to be able to get them to pay us for the product placement. Absolutely. Hey, what's up, ML? Hope all is well with you today, my friend. Yeah, and right. So this is once again like you said, God, a uni teacher kissed me on the head when I was crying and made me feel so sick. I was an adult at uni and it was still icky, right? So even though like we don't know what teachers' intentions are, I think teacher-student relationships, you have to be very, very mindful of that, and that a viewer is going to perceive it a certain way. And if you don't want it to perceive, if you don't want there to be some like crossed boundary between the teacher and the student, and you want the focus to stay on the emotional depth of the care of the loss, then I would just make some adjustments there. Like, or maybe you do want us to view the teacher as the teacher is someone who crosses boundaries, and that's the way you want us to perceive them. If that's what you want, then keep it as is, and then later in the script we're probably going to see that teacher crossing more boundaries. But it's something that to keep in mind depending on what your intentionality is with the characters. I know, I agree with that. The opening sounded very poetic, and I could totally like visualize that opening with the voiceovers and the different scene changes, and that was like a perfect opening for that type of storytelling. I think that was a really, really strong start. And I mean, that's what we're trying to do with screenplays, right? We want to be able to, with fiction and with novels, right? We need to pull somebody in with the cover and the blurb. With a screenplay, we need to pull them in with a pitch. And then we need to be able to create a visualization with only what? Descriptions and dialogue and action. We don't get interiority with scripts, right? So the challenge is different. So definitely a different type of vibe. Nice. Like Oscar, unfortunately you missed a lot. Totally all good. You're in luck because all the streams are available for the replay. So anybody who's just hopping in, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. If you hopped in later into the stream, the Story and Critique show, this episode will be available to watch on the replay right here on the WriteNow YouTube channel. You can start from the beginning. I would say give me about an hour, and I usually will add time codes to the stream itself. So that way you can hop to the part of the stream that you want to watch, or you can just go to the beginning and watch from the beginning. So, yeah. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. I think that is where my voice is at for the day. I'm feeling a little stretched on my voice, so I'm going to call it in terms of readings. But once again, I really appreciate your submissions. And I had so much fun reading today. We did sci-fi, fantasy, romantasy, thriller, and then drama. Once again, 4 different styles of storytelling. And I feel like we got some really, really great stories. So make sure that if you have not submitted, submit now. So that way you can get feedback on your story. The next critique stream will be on Saturday, September. Saturday, September 6th. So the next critique stream will be Saturday, September 6th. And if you submitted today and I didn't get to it, it will be queued up for the next stream. And if you're like, hey, Kauffman, I need feedback sooner, you can always reach out for a free consult, and we could talk about other writing services. Or if you're wanting help from the community, go hop in the Discord. We got a feedback section. You can get feedback from other writers in the community. So there's free options if you're needing help, or there's paid options if you're wanting to really invest a little bit more, because we also have the YouTube channel membership. And if you're wanting to maybe support the channel, or if you're like, hey, I want to invest a little, but I don't really have that much money, the YouTube channel membership is a great way to invest. All you have to do is hit that join button down below the YouTube video. Our next channel member office hours is actually tomorrow. So if you're wanting one-on-one feedback and you're like, hey, maybe you want to talk about your career as an author, or maybe you're just wanting feedback on a story, but you don't want to do it in the live stream, tomorrow is the channel member office hours. So that'll be tomorrow. And then also be streaming at 1 Pacific, 2, 3, 4 p.m. Eastern as we celebrate the August writing challenge. So yeah, definitely come back and join us tomorrow. And if you're wanting more stuff to watch, go check out that Reading Sprints for Storytellers playlist linked down in the YouTube description down below. Most importantly, if you enjoyed the stream, tap that like button on your way out. Help us show the algorithm that writing streams are cool. All right, my friends, thank you so much for joining. But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the stream. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers. Stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers. It's time to write
now. Sorry.
Right now, not right now, but right now. Read now, right now. Is that right?
Words are